So we know that citizens are first on the scene in an emergency or disaster, and they often remain after official services have ceased. So one of the key strengths is that people are on the ground making real-time assessments of what's going on. They have a lot of knowledge of who lives in their community, who might be vulnerable, who's impacted and how they're impacted, as well as what their needs are. So that local knowledge is really critical to effective recovery.
Spontaneous volunteering is important. It's a normal response. People converge to help people who've been impacted by a disaster. Very normal, very important part of response and recovery. For the emergency managers that are trying to manage the risks around what is, a really high risk, potentially dangerous scenario, that influx of people offering help can lead to some additional challenges and logistical issues and potential risks for them to think about as well, particularly if those people don't really have a good sense of what is needed by the community that's been impacted and how they can actually most valuably help those people.
Yeah, so there's lots of challenges around citizen-led recovery. First and foremost is occupational health and safety concerns. So they're real and they can prevent people from participating. There are concerns around legal liability, which is an issue of major concern for a lot of emergency services agencies, and rightly so. And there's also challenges around people participating in their own recovery. So often people have experienced a bushfire or a flood, then they become involved in community citizen-led recovery, and they might be experiencing trauma as a result of the initial experience, but also we know that recovery is not easy, particularly when people are taking responsibility for others. So it can be a really draining, both physically and emotionally, experience.
So my talk focused on the role that state government plays in disaster recovery in the US, and trying to explain the important role, kind of the boundary spanning role of state government, how it can serve to link federal and local issues. The idea of post-disaster, the federal government in the US in particular provides large sums of post-disaster aid that may or may not meet local needs and conditions. And the role of the state is often that intermediary, that boundary spanner, capacity building organization. Above all, it's probably the value of pre-event planning for post-disaster recovery, not only at the state level, but also the federal government or national government, the local government, and state government, all of them working together in a thoughtful way, really thinking about how those three parties working together really to look at this larger issue of disaster risk governance, and how government can play a role in working with, say it's the nonprofit community, could be the private sector, could be even groups that emerge after disaster. What role does government play in kind of serving as the glue or the boundary spanner across this larger network of aid providers?
I think, it's an area that we haven't talked about a lot at these conferences in the past. I think it's a space now that we're starting to explore more about, and understanding that psychological preparedness, understanding the psychological first aid that our own staff will need, so the responders and those service providers working in that space, how to make sure that their self-care is taken care of as well.